The playoffs weren't in the cards for the Las Vegas Raiders this season, so we're going to examine how we got here, what big decisions are coming this offseason, and why Raiders fans should have hope for the future today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you simply place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, why do you think it is that we keep forgetting this team?
I don't know.
We said, yeah, we're done with debriefs. And bless the same Raiders fan who asked us 3 times when we were doing the Raiders debrief, because he pinged us again at the end of the week and said, you guys aren't done. I didn't get my Raiders show. So he said,
Here it is.
You're absolutely right. So here we are. We're doing one more debrief. We thought we were done on Friday. We're not. We're done today with debriefs because we got to do the Las Vegas Raiders, who there's some good, there's some bad. I think there's a lot less bad than there was 6 months ago, which I think is probably the best good that you could have for the Raiders. And when you talk about what went wrong, you probably have to start the conversation with Josh McDaniels, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Toxic culture. Guys smoking cigars in the locker room after he was fired. Offensive-minded coach. Team scores 17-10, 18-17, 17, 21. He got fired after Detroit, right? So 21, 12, 14. These are the point totals. Turnovers in every game. 4 games with 3 turnovers. You spend a big contract to get Jimmy Garoppolo in because he knows your system. Can we stop? Is he done? Are we done with Josh McDaniels? We're done, right?
Oh, I've been done for a long time.
No, you and I have been done for a long time.
Yeah.
But, like, to come back to this well at any point, like, we're done doing this, right?
Well, yeah, and so as you consider why the Raiders were 8-9 and didn't make the playoffs this year, it's because you had a loser coach and you didn't have any dynamic quarterback play. And obviously, we're very excited about Antonio Pierce. We'll get to that, but you started the season with McDaniels and Jimmy Garoppolo, and it just wasn't going, right? I mean, like, even at the end of the season when you had an uptick, including a 63-point scoring outrage against the Chargers, you're still 23rd in scoring. You're 23rd in yards per pass. You're 28th in yards per rush. You just didn't have it on offense, where another one of these teams where this magic number of 20 points, Kyle, when the opposition scored 20 points or more against the Raiders, they're 1-8. 1-8 in those games. And their one win was the 63-21 win over the Chargers, right? You just didn't have it on the offensive side of the football. And I think Josh Jacobs is a big part of that too, where he just wasn't the same. Last year, he was this big offensive catalyst for them. Over 1,600 yards, 4.9 yards per carry, 3.4 yards after contact. This past season, you know, on the whatever tag deal they worked out, he's 805 yards, 3.5 yards per carry, 2.35 after contact, right? So he's like down almost a yard and a half in both yards per carry and yards after contact. He just wasn't the same dude this year. And so as you're navigating your lack of dynamic quarterback play and a loser head coach and Josh McDaniels, he didn't even have that one thing that was good in Josh Jacobs to the degree that you enjoyed him last season.
Yeah. So Jacobs on Peyton Barber watch. That's how bad it was for a guy playing on the franchise tag.
Yeah.
4.1 yards per touch on 270 touches for Josh Jacobs. And I've done Josh Jacobs like pro scouting tape and gone back and look. And he doesn't look anything like the guy from 2022. He looked a step slower. You know, you said he was a yard and a half behind. He looked like he was a yard and a half behind on all his runs versus what your expectation was for the rushing leader. And some of that's compounded by the fact that the offensive line Had some young guys on it. I know you obviously have Kolton Miller as kind of the foundational piece there. Parham at guard. Illuminor got some run at tackle. That's not a young guy. You had Andre James at center, who I think has some appealing qualities, but wasn't really there was not a strength there of that offensive line. So now you've got underwhelming quarterback play with an unassuming offensive line for much of the season, and an injured star player in Josh Jacobs, and a wide receiver in Davante Adams, who at times felt so unplugged from the situation.
Yeah.
This is just how frustrated he was with how bad the offense was.
Not a good place to be on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, there's probably a better story to tell, but I really feel like for as much as there was good on this defense, it's very disappointing to not have any defensive line impact, in my opinion, outside of Maxx Crosby. I know Malcolm Koonce. Now I know you're losing your mind. I know about Malcolm Koonce. Here's the problem. He was 13th in snaps on that defense, right? So, like, for as good as he became.
Even better.
Right. Well, that's exciting.
We threw James Houston a parade last year for getting all those sacks on 100 snaps.
Well, and it's Malcolm Koonce is part of the Levy Grail conversation, but for you to not have anything outside of Maxx Crosby with Malcolm Koonce emerging, you just did, like, the interior guys, nothing there. Jerry Tillery's playing on the edge. Just can't play. You didn't have it. And obviously the Chandler Jones situation is not good. And you were counting on that impact at the start of the season. But the bottom line here is you just didn't have enough from that defensive line, despite some good stories to tell in the back seven. Defensive line impact outside of Maxx Crosby was just not good enough.
They had a lot of guys that played on defense too.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at the snap totals. They got 4 guys over 90%, 6, 8, 10 guys over 50%, but then 14 guys over 40%, and 16 guys over 30%. they got a lot of guys who are getting run, and I guess that's great for evaluation opportunities and getting guys in there. And you get Jack Jones as a waiver wire ad, and that's a nice ad for you when we get to the Levy Grill to kind of double back to. I did think Adam Butler was a rotational pass rush guy. I think he was third on the team in sacks. That's kind of a nice ad. But if that's the depths that you're going to find, particularly up front, for a team that's supposed to be like real physical and we're going to come get you, you need more bodies. I mean, you didn't have enough ammunition this year to really make the most of this season's opportunities.
But it finished well. Antonio Pierce really infused this team. I mean, you go 5-5 down the stretch with Aidan O'Connell. And no disrespect to Aidan O'Connell, but it just wasn't good enough at quarterback in totality, especially to make up for some of the other issues on this roster. All right, we are going to get into the big decisions coming this offseason. They've already made one of those. They still need a general manager, a lot more to dig into, so be sure to stick with us. But, folks, the NFL playoffs are here, but there's still plenty of time to get in on the action over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you simply place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to navigate. So many different ways that you can bet, like a live same-game parlay. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. They have a parlay hub and more, including all the spreads, player props, over-unders, all the fun stuff. So get in on the action over at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
I think their GM decision's easy.
Really?
Champ Kelly.
Okay, yeah, it feels like there's 3 candidates here, right?
Yeah.
Champ Kelly, Ed Dodds, Tom Telesco, who's getting a second interview.
Yes. So Telesco is obviously the value there is he knows the divisional opponent extremely well. He was the general manager for the Chargers for the last decade. That's the upside with Telesco. You know what you're getting.
Don't you feel like
we've met Champ Kelly? He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
And there was some good vibes in that building.
Mm-hmm.
After obviously the McDaniels change, I wouldn't mess with it.
I tend to agree with you. I think the most important thing with this general manager hire is you've already made Antonio Pierce your head coach. And so what you want is synergy, right, between that head coach and that general manager. And so if that exists between AP and Champ Kelly, like, let's go. Let's boogie. I think that Champ has the capacity. He's charismatic. I don't really have any concerns about him being able to step in and do this job. But making sure that that relationship is good and you feel optimistic about it moving forward. Like Ed Dodds, I don't know, nice run with Seattle, assistant GM with the Colts. I don't know. I don't know that he moves the needle much for me. And Tom Telesco, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, he had a long run with the Chargers, but what do they have to show for it? Like, I feel like we've been able to poke holes in incomplete rosters for the Chargers for a long, long time, despite having, a quarterback on a rookie deal, despite having late stage Phillip Rivers. I just feel like he failed to maximize both of those opportunities. So, like, if the synergy's there with Champ and AP, like, let's boogie.
So that's kind of the next domino that has to fall for the Raiders. But then they also have some transitional stuff that they need to take care of, starting first and foremost with we're post June 1st Jimmy G, right?
Oh,
we're not rolling that back next year and giving him an opportunity to.
How frustrating was he to watch execute that offense where it was just like, just throw it to Davante. It did not throw, like, not working progressions for a guy that was supposed to know the system, like, just completely cooked. I'm uninterested in Jimmy G.
The system that he knew was the Shanahan system that made him a viable starter in that system, right? There's system fits. And that's so far departed from what they tried to be.
Yeah.
And what McDaniels' scheme is that I don't know that you're going to double back to. And Jimmy G and Jacoby Brissett have talked about when they were in New England, they didn't even work with McDaniels because McDaniels was so in the weeds with Brady and they were such a high level of the ins and outs of that offense. They worked with the quarterback's coach. They didn't even work with McDaniels because they're like McDaniels and Brady had their own language talking about the offense. So I don't know, hindsight's 2020 and all that stuff, but like, I don't know how you looked at those pieces and like that was were you just that desperate to move on from Derek Carr and you're like, oh, I know him. Because that's the Patriot way these days, right? Is, oh, I know him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do that because I know him. Instead of, oh, I know that's actually going to work or, oh, that's actually not going to work. So post June 1st Jimmy G, you could save $13 million against the cap this year. Take a $15 million dead cap. I think they have some restructures that are very easy decisions to make between Maxx Crosby and Kolton Miller.
Yeah.
Open up some additional cap space for them. I think they have, 13?
Over the cap has the Raiders at $31 million. Simple restructures get them the 92.
Okay. Yeah.
This is
Jakobi Meyers with a big bonus. What are we doing with Hunter Renfrow?
I had that down in my list of things that we needed to talk about. Jimmy G, you've already checked that box. And then Hunter Renfrow, who had that good season a few years ago. You felt like he was going to be this really reliable slot target. And especially with McDaniels and his history with those guys. And it just hasn't happened. And, there's been a lot of speculation on trades and they haven't pulled the trigger there. I don't know if the value has been there, but we need to either get Hunter Renfrow focused in on being our slot receiver and making that work, or we need to move on. A decision for whoever the GM is going to be.
He's entering into the last year of his deal and he's owed $11 million in cash.
Do something about that, right?
Yeah. So that's not a sustainable situation as is. And there's void years on the back end of that. So like, let's not restructure that either. Let's
be done.
Either be done or let's get him an extension with the anticipation that he's going to be a much bigger part of the offense. But don't you feel like there's a little bit of overlap there with him and Jakobi Meyers?
Yeah, and I certainly like what Meyers is as a player. I like what he gave this team. So yeah, there's some redundancy, and I that would make me want to lean more into Jakobi. And if you can part with Hunter Renfrow and put him in a situation, I do it.
You can move on from Hunter Renfrow at the start of the league year, take a $5 million dead cap hit, and save $8.2 million.
Something like that's got to happen.
Probably the way that this needs to unfold for them.
Yeah.
What about Davante Adams?
Are you interested in calling the Jets up? I mean, what are we doing here?
I mean, yeah, you're entering into the phase
it's like
of
a
the
$44
contract.
million cap hit this year, right?
$25 million this year, and then 44 in each of the next 2 years.
Next two,
and that's there's no guaranteed money after this year. His salary is fully guaranteed this year,
and he's 32 right now.
And he's 32 right now. You could
really
trade
concerned.
for Davante Adams, play him this year on the deal, and pay him a $17 million salary, and then move him or extend him and use his salary figure as the signing bonus and get a 2-year runway with a third year that's effectively the option year that are the 2 option years they're facing now. There's a lot of stuff you can do. But if I'm the Raiders and I'm looking at, okay, who are we? Who do we want to be? What's our timeline? I do think there's a conversation that could be had there about that being a valuable asset to somebody else where the contract lines up and it makes sense. Or is your time going to align with Davante Adams' timeline of still being Davante Adams?
I'd be concerned about it. Right, 170-something targets this past year. I know that's not coming from great quarterback play, but I wonder / worry about what type of market's going to be out there for him outside of Aaron Rodgers, forcing the issue with the Jets.
Like, I think that's why it's important that you're in a position that you have 1 year of guaranteed salary and it's less than $17 million.
Yeah.
That's a steal for Davante Adams. If you want to do it in a 1 year and then try to renegotiate a contract after that.
Yeah.
Offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Need that.
Any desires for direction?
Well, I think we have to figure out a direction at quarterback. That would be interesting to me, whether that's, are you I don't know that you're really in position to draft one. You got pick 13. You'd have to move up, or do you want to live in the world of Bo Nix and Michael Penix? I don't know if that's where I'd want to be. Are you do we call the Bears about Justin Fields? Are we a Kirk Cousins team? Are we a Russell Wilson team? Right? Like, they got to figure that out. And including Aidan O'Connell is, a guy that you've seen for 10 games. If that's the path that you want. So they got to figure that out. I don't know that I have convictions about what the right path to go. I wouldn't try to do anything that was not positioning myself to have a dynamic player. I don't want to just get by.
Right.
I got Mahomes and Herbert and Sean Payton in my division. I'd want to give myself a chance there, but they got to figure that out for sure.
I think Aidan O'Connell can be an NFL quarterback for a long time, but as a starter, I'm just not.
Ceiling, yeah, it's not super great.
I think that, so I would want to have an infusion of higher upside and more physical gifts at that spot.
Yeah, no doubt. Expiring contracts are pretty unconcerning. I don't know if you've looked through this. I'm sure you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's Josh Jacobs at 25 years old. I don't know. Zamir White seems pretty good to me. I can replace that. If you want him back, you can bring him back. Hopefully he'll be healthy and he's still young. Andre James, 26-year-old center who's been solid for you. Jermaine Illumineur, 29 years old, right tackle. Greg Van Roten was actually pretty solid for them at right guard, 33 years old, but you're not going to be overly concerned there. Like, what else? Amik Robertson, 25 years old. Bilal Nichols, 27. Austin Hooper, 29. I'm not scared of this at all.
Yeah. So I think a lot of your evaluation opportunity with the guys that you brought in, you're going to know who you want to cling to, who are your pillars, who are your life preservers, and then from there, you can kind of try to stack on top of it. But you have unanswered questions at a number of really important spots right now that make it difficult to have clarity on like what your competitive timeline's really going to be.
5th-year option, Alex Leatherwood, no decision to make there. He's not even around. So
correct.
All right, let's get positive here. We're going to talk about why Raiders fans should be hopeful for the future, so stick with us. But, folks, you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Well, luckily, Game Time is here for you, and it is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy and theater events near you. There's plenty of that going on in Vegas. So definitely the spot that you want to make sure you have the Game Time app downloaded. And what I love about Game Time is you don't have to plan months in advance for the tickets. You can get a killer deal on a last-minute ticket. They give you all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee. Simply put, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. The app is awesome, easy to navigate. They give you flash deals, last-minute tickets like I mentioned, and when you purchase tickets, you don't have to dig through emails to find them. They send them straight to your phone. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
I'm not doing the poem. You can do the poem. I thought we were done with the poem.
Fight on, my man. I am hurt, but I am not slain. I'll lay me down and bleed a while, and then I'll rise and fight again. Kyle, that hits different today. Hits different today than it did last week. I'm not going to lie, but
I'm sure it does.
It's a little different.
Yep.
But it's a rallying cry. It's a rallying cry for the 31 teams whose season does not end the way that they want it to, right? So Raiders fans, we're going to talk about why you need to be optimistic. And I'll start with this, man. Resources galore. I mean, they can get up to $100 million in cap space, and they have good draft picks, 10 draft picks, including picks 13, 44, and 77, 112, 146, so 5 in the top 150. And you got to be excited about Antonio Pierce being your head coach, because that feels like a needle mover for free agents, right? I feel like they're going to want to go play for AP and go play for the silver and black in Vegas and a beautiful stadium that you have. Like, there's a lot going there that makes it an appealing place. Also, no state income tax in Nevada. Like, this is a good spot to be. We have, kind of the infrastructure that feels appealing, and to have those resources, you should really be able to add to this roster in a lot of ways this offseason.
So I want to keep on Antonio Pierce for a sec. I know we were surprised when that was the choice for interim head coach when they fired McDaniels. I think you saw Patrick Graham on the coaching staff and knew of his reputation, and he had interviewed for head coaching jobs. And so when it comes through and it's Antonio Pierce, I know it surprised both you and I, but I kind of get like the Dan Campbell vibes here. And I don't know if you remember, Dan Campbell was an interim head coach, and he was not given an opportunity. And then 3 years goes by, and then he gets his head coaching opportunity. And I think you see the blend of former NFL player, young coach, intense, but with a very special connection with his players. And like, that's the formula that Dan Campbell has had success. And because he's a young coach, he attracts a lot of young assistants to be on his staff, and built a very exciting staff.
Yep.
So that pathway, not looking at Antonio Pierce and say, hey, you did a great job, but your resume, we're not quite sure it is where we want it to be. We're going to go in a different direction. And instead saying, hey, you did a great job, and we want to see this through with you. And seeing the parallels between what Campbell has cultivated in Detroit as kind of a downtrodden franchise, and now Antonio Pierce, I think is the biggest thing for me that I look at with the Raiders, and I say, hey, you have a chance to do something unique here. And that's exciting.
I'm not sure there's a whole lot better things to say after that. I mean, if you're a Raiders fan and you just listen to that, you're pretty doggone excited.
You should be.
Yeah, wait. I think that was a phenomenal job of tying in the Antonio Pierce factor into the resources and what he can get done. And I hadn't really thought of that Dan Campbell angle, but talk about a galvanizing force, a CEO type that can really stabilize and have a clear vision. And that synergy, if it's there with Champ Kelly and they hire him, that's exciting.
That's the big thing, because that's what Detroit has, is
doubt.
they're in lockstep, and they've been on the same page the entire way. And you have to find, whether that's Champ Kelly, Tom Telesco, Joe Marino, whoever that hire is the most important decision the Raiders will make. Because if you're going to get that version of that pathway with Antonio Pierce, you have to have grace, you have to have time, and you have to have cohesion.
You like some of this talent on the roster?
It's some guys who took a nice step forward, too.
A lot of young guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Parham.
Moehrig showed up this year for him at safety.
Malcolm Koonce.
Spillane is a free agent addition.
Yo, right? Yo on Spillane. I remember because I was thinking about trade candidates. I'm like, I'm watching Spillane with the Raiders early in the season. I'm like, this dude's a baller. And I know that he wasn't really well thought of in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And like they have completely unlocked him. He looks like a dude at linebacker. Not to mention, like, you mentioned Jack Jones already and what he was able to bring as a waiver wire pickup. Nate Hobbs, Zamir White. I mean, it's nice to have that transition plan in place.
Oh, you have Maxx Crosby?
Yeah, I heard about that guy. He's pretty good.
There's some stuff to like here.
Yeah.
So, Raiders fans, you've passed the vibe check with the first decision. Can't wait to see what else you do. But Champ Kelly. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive look at the Las Vegas Raiders and their offseason ahead. Joe and I are starting our consulting pitches for franchises this week as well. We're going to look at some of the teams that have coaching vacancies and kind of our pitch to them, our consulting pitch on what we think they should do and what direction they should look to take. That's coming up later this week, so look for that. You can find us again on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a good one. We'll talk to y'all again soon.